Today, we are going to see how you can use AI to create maps in QGIS. That's right, we are diving into the QGIS MCP server and showing how you can use Claude to actually orchestrate and build maps in QGIS. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. An MCP is basically what's called a model context protocol integration that allows you to use a language AI or LLM system, in this case Claude, and the desktop app that comes with it to directly interact and control QGIS. And you'll see how this is hooked up in the background so you can kind of understand how all this works and exactly what it does. We'll show you how to get set up and then actually do some basic operations with it. So I just want to credit the person who put this together, Juan Sanchoa. He built this here, and you can kind of see what this does. It has the two-way communication to connect Claude AI to QGIS, project manipulation, layer manipulation, execute processing things, all this different stuff that you can actually do. So there's a lot you can actually build out with this, which is really interesting. Now, to do this, all you have to do is download this repo. You can do that here. I generally use the GitHub CLI to clone the repo, and then you just have to follow these instructions here, which I'll walk through in just a minute to show you how to get up and running. So once you have the repo set up, there's a few different steps that you want to go through. So let's go all the way to the top here and take a look. So once you've set up UV, which is very similar to pip, it's a Python package manager, you can go ahead and get started. There's instructions how to do that if you're on Windows here, which you can see. And then all you have to do, like I said, is download this repo. And here's kind of where things start to get maybe not tricky, but there's a few steps you want to be aware of. So you see this folder here, the QGIS MCP plugin right here. You have to copy that into the folder location where your plugins live in QGIS. So if you see here, here's how you can do that on a Windows machine. You can open this up via the command line, and that should do this. So I've set this in my QGIS system here. I believe it's in the long-term release. But if I just do this same command, open library applications, support, so on and so forth, it will open that up, and you can see here are all the plugins that I've installed. You could, I believe, zip this up and upload it as a plugin here, just as a manual plugin install. So you could do that. It would end up in the same location. So just a faster way to do that if you think of it that way. So that's what you can do. Once you've done that, you just have to close QGIS and open it again. And what you need to do here is you can go to plugins, manage and install plugins, and then you should see in here you can find the MCP. It should be installed. So initially this won't be checked. You'll have to check that, and then that will install it. You can install it and then set that up, and then you should be ready to go for that first step. So now that you've moved that folder in, you have to set up the Claude desktop integration. Now, for reference, I'm using the paid version of this because it gets me a few credits, and we'll kind of see the limitations of some of the credits and things like that. But that's what I'm doing here. Use the free version to a certain extent. You might only get a few commands out, but that's one of the limitations is basically your Claude account here. But if you see here, once you've set up and installed Claude, the desktop service, you can just go to Claude desktop, download Claude, and you can set that up here. It should be ready to go then. What you need to do is basically copy this configuration into this path. So we go Claude here, Claude settings, developer should be right here. And then you can edit config. Yep, edit the config path. And then that will open here. I can open that with Visual Studio Code. You can see here I've copied that in. Now this looks different from the preview because you can see here is the absolute path to parent repo folder. So what that means is that it's where this parent, the source QGIS MCP folder lives. So if you look here, there's the source QGIS MCP. What I want to do is copy this path, right? And that path will return that exact same path. And that's what you want to pass in there because that's where the MCP server Python file lives. And that's basically the command to set up and run this. So once you've done those two things, then you should be ready to go. Now, to start all of this, I actually have to go over to QGIS, and you can make sure that all these things are connected. If you need to restart QGIS, that's a common step I've seen people have to do. So once you've done that, you're actually ready to go. So let's go over to QGIS and Claude and go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've downloaded a few data sets to get started with. I've put those here in this data folder. You can find them, and I'll include some links to these different data sets, but I'm just including two right now. They're in Seattle. So it's the transportation network, specifically with buses, and we can take a look at that here. And then I'm also pulling in a DEM data set for elevation. So we're going to do a few different operations here. Now, when you open Claude to make sure everything is working, if you click this search and tools, you should see QGIS active, and then you can choose which tools you actually give it access to. Now, behind the scenes, what you can take a look at in the code here is actually what's kind of taking place. And this is basically the different stuff that's happening. This allows it to connect to the QGIS MCP server. And you can see it's running some different commands here from that side. And then the actual plugin is actually doing some different things here. So you see all these different commands. If we go to the very top without digging into all the code here, you can see it's using the QGIS Python package. So everything here is happening through Python. It's just the LLM is interpreting what to do based on your instructions, and then deciding which tool to use. And that tool has very well structured Python to execute that code in it. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. It's not like some magic that's connecting all of this. The LLM is interpreting your command and doing that. So let's give it a command. What I want it to do is basically put this data set on the map. So we'll get the path for my shapefile here, which is going to be this. Now, this is important because you need to tell it where the data lives. So I'm going to copy the path here. I'm going to say, please create a new map in QGIS and center it on this data set and add it to the map. So we'll give it the path for that data and go ahead and let it run. So what I'm going to do is pass that here. Now I have these things side by side so we can see what's happening, and you'll see it's thinking what it should do. It's going to create a new project. Now you can see it's picked that tool. So it's going to create a new project. Here's the path. It's creating a temporary project here. Now, first things first, I didn't actually set up the MCP command. So that was my first error here, which is one common one. So what I want to do is basically here, set up QGIS MCP and start the server. So let's try this again. I'm going to run this command here and go ahead and set that up. So that was my fault. I made that mistake. And it's creating the new project here. You can see it's created my new project called Bus Network Project. It's going to add the transportation layer. You can see it's added it to the map here. And then it says it has this many features. It's zooming to that layer extent. And then it's created the project. Now, what we want to do is figure out, what do we want to do with this map? So I probably want to add a base map here just for reference. And then what I also want to do is style this by some measure in the data. So if I go back to the source data set here, you can see if I click on one of these roads, it has some information about the speed limit, to, from point, stuff like that. And I think there's some information about if this is a bus route as well. So this is the transportation network for bus and transit lines. So let's see if we can find one that likely has a bus on it, like a busy road here. I'm trying to see what all these, so bus flow is 0. I'm trying to figure out where it would say there's bus flow is something here, but we can at least map speed limits at a minimum. So bus flow is 2. Okay, so maybe we want to style it by that. So can you first add an OSM base map, then style the map by the speed limit column? Let's give it this specific name. This is one thing I've found that works well, speed limit. We'll see if it comes up with its own color scheme, and filter the data to, and we want this column here where bus flow is greater than 0. So we only really care about the buses in this one. So let's go ahead and give it this command, and let's see what it comes up with here. Now this is a temporary project. You would have to save this as well, so keep that in mind. So now it's thinking. It's going to add the OSM base map here and execute the code. So you see what it's doing here. It's trying to do some different stuff, which is interesting. That's adding a raster layer. It's very odd. This is where things can, okay, so it worked. That's fine. So we added that in here. So just move that underneath. And now we're going to filter this bus network layer and see what that comes up with. So I'm just going to turn that off so we can see the result. And you can see it's just executing this code. Now, sometimes it's going to actually go ahead and build this code itself. So it's using some different pieces here where it actually has connection and it's building some different things. Let's see what it decides. It's defining the color ranges. So this is actually generating some of this code here and building that out, which is where I think you can it adds too many steps into it. But you can see here, okay, here's where the speed limits are. Here's where the bus flow is greater than 0. So there's some of these. This is still looks a little bit odd, so it's not perfect here, but I'm getting something, and it's going to save the project and set that up. So I think there's, I don't know exactly where some of these bus flow pieces are, but effectively we get some idea of like the bus network here, things like that. So it may have been a error in the data itself, but at least we get something reasonable here on the map and something like that. So you can see it created this custom styling here between 0 and 25 miles per hour. I can ask it to remove the filter, or I can just do that myself. So bus flow greater than 0. We'll get rid of that, hit save, and then we'll just see, or sorry, just hit OK. So then we get all of the speed limits here. So you can see what those look like here from that side. So you can see it's created its own speed limit, everything like that. Great. That looks good. Now let's do another step. And what I want to do is basically grab that data path for my DEM. So I'm going to copy path here. Now can you add this DEM raster layer and create a hill shade for it? So what's cool so far is that it was able to actually create some semi-advanced symbology here. It's not perfect, but effectively it has access to all these different tools. And you can do a spatial join here. You could do some more kind of advanced processing, but it has access to all the tools that you have in your QGIS environment. So if you wanted to do, the geoprocessing pieces, something with GDAL or GRASS, in this case, I'm asking it to use the hill shading effect for this raster layer. So it's looking for the DEM. We'll see as it gets that on the map what it's doing here. I forgot to add it. So I have to give it permission to do these things sometimes. I can allow it to do that here. And now you've seen it's adding the raster layer to the map. So this is just that DEM layer that I have. Now it's going to create the hill shade. You can see here's the algorithm, what it's doing, all this different stuff. Here's the response. Now it's adding the hill shade to the map. Cool. Now let me just layer ordering to make the hill shade blend nicely. So let's see what that does. Let me fix the blend mode syntax. Let's see what it's doing here. And it's going to save the project. So it had that layer that I wanted on it. I don't know why I took it off. Let's see what it's doing now. So I don't know why it took that off of there, but that's interesting. So let's try this again. I'm going to try to do some styling here on this. But basically, this is some of the stuff you can do. This is nothing different than you could do by pointing and clicking, to be clear. It's just executing it via code, so it feels like it's a little bit hands-off and cool. So, we'll see how this one turns out. And then, I want to keep an eye on the number of credits here. Again, I'm using just the upgraded paid version, so I have access to more steps it can run. But again, it's not removing you as a human from the process, but I can do some of these different things. And now it's also, causing some issues because it can't figure out where the DEM is. So it looks like it's, trying to pull that in. Let me re-add them and apply the topographic styling. So it's doing you can kind of see there where it's hitting some basic errors here. So with that said, how should you use this and what is it useful for? Well, it can, the most basic version is it just automates some stuff that maybe you don't want to do. It's kind of doing this in the background. I could be doing other work. That's maybe one way to use it, but that's not the way I would use it. What I would do to use this is actually have it do some exploratory work on the data, maybe kind of understand what's in the data and things like that. You could also use it specifically on the styling side. What I liked about it, and if we go back in our chat history, is that it interpreted the data and created this custom styling symbology. Now I could do that with multiple different elements in my data. It still requires me to look in the data and understand it. I could also, give it some, steps to do more advanced things here. So, you could, do more advanced styling. This is nice because it gave it this nice kind of custom styling that I wanted to build into this. But, it gives some nice views about how to do these basic things. And so one is just work in the background, which isn't that valuable. Two would be to actually, do some more advanced stylistic elements in your maps. If there's maybe something you want to try out and say here's this map, how could I do this? Ask it to actually build that out, and it can kind of help you structure that and see how to do that rather than you working through tutorials and doing that. And then I would say the final thing is to really help you kind of learn new pieces within QGIS. Maybe there's something that you want to figure out how to do. It can help you figure out how to do that, show you that, and actually show you how to build that in the map. It's kind of like a tutorial teacher that's custom built for what you want to do. That's probably the most valuable thing. It's not like automating your work or making it easier. The things you know how to do, like you don't need to have an AI do that for you. But for the things you don't know how to do, it helps you learn them, explore them, and figure them. So that's my best recommendation on how to do this. You can use it for those more advanced use cases where it's like, I don't know exactly how to do this. I don't know exactly what I should be doing here, and here's how I could maybe can you help me figure that out? And frankly, that's how you should be using AI anyways. If you're just using it to automate stuff you already know how to do, that's fine, but you know how to do that and you're skilled in that already. But for the new things that you don't know how to do or you want to learn, that's the best way to use AI. And you can do that with a few structured, kind of system prompts. There's a whole process on how to make this really efficient. I actually built it into a course called the AI Copilot for GIS. I'd recommend checking that out. I'll include a link in the description. It basically walks you through this process of how to use AI effectively, structure these prompts, give it a system prompt to set up the project so you can set up the chat that you're building with a lot more context about what you want to do rather than just I'm going to start building and going from there. So you can give it a whole kind of view of what you want to accomplish, build that system prompt so it's very clear on the task it should be performing and gives it a very concrete set of instructions to do that. So let's say you have a map you're trying to figure out, it can analyze that, take a look at that just in general AI. You can understand the components of the project, to describe it. I want to use it in QGIS, and then can you actually help me build that? And that's a better use of AI to do that. So check out the AI Copilot for GIS program. I'll drop that below so you can check that out. It's a course you can finish in half a day and move through it very quickly. And plus you can use it across not just QGIS, but GeoPandas and lots of other tools. So go ahead and check that out. It's been fun to play around with this and experiment. You get to do some cool stuff and build some things out quickly, which is great. And yeah, I want to see how you're using it. Go ahead and play around with that. And hopefully this helps you get set up and running and integrating some AI into your spatial workflows.